and I'll continue to take that on and be that for my teammates. And if I want to be that, and I know I'll go down in history, I'll look back in 20 years and be like, yeah, the reason why we watching women's basketball is not just because of one person, it's because of me too, and I want y'all to realize that.
Is Angel Reese rewriting the script on women's basketball, or simply picking a fight she can't finish? Her recent remarks about demanding equal pay with NBA players have ignited a debate that stretches far beyond locker rooms and sports talk shows. There's tension, there's drama, and there are more than a few bruised egos. But one thing is certain, whenever the subject of money comes up, the conversation gets fiery. It's not just about the dollars themselves, but the question of who really holds the power in professional basketball. Some say Angel Reese is dead wrong to insist the WNBA should match the NBA's salaries. Others praise her for having the guts to speak out about a gap they feel has existed for too long. Yet the entire league has a star overshadowing this conversation: Caitlin Clark, whose meteoric rise has suddenly made WNBA headlines pop up in places nobody expected. Clark's name alone might be the reason anyone's talking about women's basketball in prime time. Meanwhile, Reese's outspoken nature has earned her both fans and enemies. Some call her fearless, others accuse her of whining. Whichever side you're on, you can't deny there's something happening in the WNBA right now, and it's impossible to look away. But that isn't the whole story. A closer look reveals an underfunded league propped up by NBA subsidies, low historical TV ratings, and a brand new surge in viewers that might be too little, too late. So where does Angel Reese fit into all this? Is she merely riding the wave that Caitlin Clark has sparked, or is she trying to carve out her own claim to the WNBA's future? Let's dive into the swirling controversies, the power plays, and the real numbers behind the deal. By the end, you might have a very different perspective on who actually holds the cards, and why the WNBA's biggest obstacle might just be its own history. Angel Reese didn't just dip her toes into controversy, she leaped in head first. In multiple interviews and on her personal podcast, she's made it clear that she believes WNBA players deserve a bigger piece of the pie. She wants salaries on par with the NBA, or at least something substantially closer. Right away, skeptics were quick to point out that the WNBA's revenue and viewership are nowhere near the NBA's, which still commands enormous TV deals and global fan engagement. Critics also wasted no time reminding her that she's still on a rookie contract, one that was collectively bargained just a few years ago. This pay demand would be contentious in any sport, but it's particularly explosive in the WNBA. Historically, women's basketball has struggled for attention, often overshadowed by college sports, let alone men's professional leagues. For years, the WNBA has been subsidized by the NBA, relying on financial support to keep the lights on. Understandably, those footing the bill are reluctant to approve major salary hikes. From an outsider's perspective, you could argue that Reese's timing is off. Why ask for more money when the league itself is still finding its footing? On the other hand, some fans admire her willingness to speak out, viewing it as a catalyst that might finally push the WNBA toward a more profitable future. But the question remains, does Angel Reese have the leverage to force these changes? From the harshest critics, the short answer is no. After all, they argue she's not the face of the league. Many believe that if anyone in the WNBA can single-handedly boost the sport's popularity, it's Caitlin Clark, a phenomenon who's inspiring new fans to tune in. Meanwhile, Reese's remarks have left her open to ridicule. She's been called everything from uneducated to entitled, words that have lit a fire under her fans and fed her haters. Yet even her most vocal opponents acknowledge that she's brought the pay gap conversation into the mainstream. Whether she's the hero or the villain depends on whom you ask. To talk about Angel Reese's push for a bigger paycheck without talking about Caitlin Clark's breakout is almost impossible. For years, the WNBA struggled to consistently cross 1 million viewers on nationally televised games. Then, Clark's dynamic style and record-breaking performances started drawing in fans who'd never before watched a minute of women's basketball. Suddenly, the ratings climbed to an average of 1.2 million viewers per nationally aired game, an eye-opening number for a league that so often faced mockery for low attendance. There's a growing perception that Clark, more than any other single player, has injected new life into the WNBA. But not everyone's thrilled. Some league veterans feel overshadowed, while others see her success as a positive sign that star power can exist in women's basketball. This is where Angel Reese's critics pivot. They claim the WNBA's leverage comes from personalities, like Clark, not from Reese's complaints about pay. Meanwhile, rumor has it that tensions between Clark and some other players are real. Reports of flagrant fouls and negative comments on social media keep swirling. If true, it underscores a larger issue. Internal rifts might be growing just as the league is hitting a ratings stride, but that wasn't the whole story. Even if Clark's name is on everyone's lips, the WNBA is a team sport. Maybe she's sparking interest, but is that enough to overhaul the entire pay structure? The league still depends on sponsorships, TV deals, and ticket sales. Revenue flows from brand partnerships that want broad appeal, not just one star. So while Clark's presence is undeniably a gift to the WNBA's marketing department, the question is whether Angel Reese and others can capitalize on that moment, or if they'll keep butting heads over who's really responsible for this. New newfound spotlight. To understand why Angel Reese's pay demands seem unrealistic to some, it helps to know how the WNBA operates behind the scenes. Established in the mid-1990s, the league never turned a profit on its own, at least not in any substantial sense. Each year, the NBA hands over millions of dollars to keep the WNBA afloat, covering everything from facility fees and travel expenses to marketing and staffing. If a business can't support itself without outside funding, asking for a massive salary hike is going to raise eyebrows. Critics of the league say the WNBA should have collapsed years ago without these subsidies. Supporters argue that the NBA invests in plenty of things that don't turn immediate profit, from youth programs to global outreach initiatives, because it sees a long-term benefit. Women's basketball, they insist, is no different. It just needs more time to grow. Indeed, the past few years have shown signs of progress. The league negotiated a new collective bargaining agreement in 2020 that boosted the average salary to around $130,000. Star players can earn well above that thanks to bonuses, endorsements, and marketing deals. And what happened next would shock everyone. Ratings started to creep upward. Whether it's a direct result of stronger marketing, bigger personalities like Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, or a combination of factors, the WNBA found itself in a healthier position than many anticipated. Yet there's a wide gap between healthier and profitable enough to match NBA salaries. When Angel Reese proclaims she deserves the same type of money as NBA players raking in millions per season, most economists raise a skeptical eyebrow. For them, it's less about fairness and more about hard revenue numbers. And as of now, those numbers don't lie. The WNBA isn't generating anything close to the NBA's billions. While Angel Reese's supporters hail her as a fearless agitator, her critics accuse her of everything from ignorance to arrogance. Much of this hostility plays out online, where fans argue ferociously over how much she deserves, or doesn't, deserve. Social media amplifies every word she says, leaving no room for middle ground. But the criticism isn't purely about her pay remarks. Some fans reference alleged rough play, particularly around Caitlin Clark, citing an increase in flagrant fouls whenever the two share the court. Is there truth to these claims, or is it just fan-driven rumor? League officials haven't publicly named Reese in any widespread campaign against Clark, but spectators note that Clark seems to be on the receiving end of many questionable hits. Some blame the league's competitiveness, saying that when a star emerges, rivals naturally try to slow her down by any means. Others claim it's personal, born of jealousy over the spotlight Clark receives in the media. Either way, the allegations have fueled arguments that Reese should focus on perfecting her own game before claiming the WNBA can't survive without higher wages for its players. At the heart of these debates is a question of sportsmanship and professionalism. If Reese aspires to be a top earner, critics argue she should emulate those at the top of the game, improving her shooting, cutting down on fouls, and showcasing teamwork that drives fan excitement. Instead, they say she's mostly complaining on podcasts about money and overshadowing the progress made by other dedicated athletes. In fairness, Reese isn't alone in challenging the status quo. Many WNBA players have voiced frustrations about salary caps and league rules, but her high-profile statements and occasional jabs at rivals make her an easy target for public ire. Every high-stakes conversation eventually comes down to dollars and cents. In 2023, the NBA inked an astronomical media rights deal estimated at $76 billion spread over multiple years across several networks and streaming platforms. By comparison, the WNBA's most recent deal is around $2.2 billion, a huge sum for women's sports, yet still a fraction of the NBA's. On an annual basis, that difference becomes stark. The WNBA's around $200 million per year pales next to the NBA's multi-billion-dollar windfall. This reality is one of the biggest hurdles Angel Reese and fellow players face when arguing for pay raises. Even if fans believe they should be paid more, the money simply may not exist on the scale they envision. Endorsements also play a role. In the NBA, global brands line up to sign stars to multi-million-dollar shoe contracts. In the WNBA, sponsorships are growing but remain comparatively modest. That's why many players, including Reese, rely on side ventures, podcasts, YouTube channels, endorsement deals with smaller brands to bump up their overall income. It's true that interest is finally rising for the WNBA, with networks picking up more games and giving primetime slots to top matchups. Building a legacy like the NBA's takes time. The men's league has had decades to develop storied rivalries, cultivate fan bases around the world, and sign massive international broadcast agreements. Women's basketball is only beginning to carve out its own identity in the mainstream. Reese's critics argue that if she wants long-term financial success, she should continue to develop her personal brand and sharpen her skills, taking advantage of the new wave of interest driven by players like Caitlin Clark. After all, if the league thrives and new fans stick around, there's a better chance that bigger salaries will follow eventually. A swirling question keeps popping up in all corners of social media. Is the problem that the WNBA makes too little, or that the NBA makes too much? On the surface, it might seem absurd to say NBA stars should be paid less, but some observers note that the NBA's ratings aren't what they used to be either. While it still racks up millions of viewers, there's no denying the challenges of a changing media landscape. Streaming services, cord cutting, and overseas markets have shaken up traditional TV ratings. Even so, the NBA continues to reel in gigantic media contracts, keeping salaries at jaw-dropping levels. Angel Reese and her fans see this as a glaring discrepancy, viewing the NBA as flush with cash while the WNBA scraps for crumbs. A bolder idea sometimes floated by commentators is that maybe NBA salaries should decrease in proportion to their actual ratings. Then, theoretically, some of that money could redistribute to the WNBA. But that notion typically goes nowhere because the NBA is a massive global brand with entire corporations and countless jobs depending on its continued growth. Any sign of scaling back salaries or budgets would likely face fierce resistance from players, agents, and even owners who fear it might hurt the league's overall image. And what happened next would shock everyone. Some WNBA fans have started to suggest that bridging the gap might not require a complete overhaul, but rather a smarter use of existing resources. Partnerships, co-branded events, and star-driven marketing campaigns help funnel more revenue into the WNBA without drastically cutting the NBA's checks. Whether that approach will ever come to fruition remains to be seen. Until then, the divide persists, with Angel Reese cast as either a champion for women's sports or someone pushing an impossible dream. When Angel Reese revealed that her rent alone costs thousands each month, critics mocked her for choosing an expensive lifestyle she allegedly can't afford on a WNBA salary. She responded by pointing out that professional athletes in men's sports often live in luxury apartments or own multiple homes, so why shouldn't she aim for that too? Some scoff at her logic, accusing her of wanting the perks of an NBA superstar without putting in the same revenue-generating efforts. Others applaud her for refusing to settle, praising her confidence in her own worth. Meanwhile, voices throughout social media and sports commentary keep insisting that Reese should stay out of the meetings if she doesn't understand the basic economics that drive professional sports. They argue she'd do better in a college-level economics class than in a bargaining session with league executives. But her defenders say she's exactly who needs to be in the room, someone unafraid. Speak out and force the league to evaluate its priorities. After all, the WNBA can't grow if no one is willing to rock the boat. It's also worth noting that as the league edges upward in popularity, more players have started talking about ways to capitalize on the momentum. Endorsements, brand deals, and personal media ventures could pave the way for higher incomes, even if direct salaries take time to catch up. If Angel Reese sees herself as the next face of women's basketball, she has every reason to push for more control over how the league presents itself to the world. The question is whether she can balance that boldness with a willingness to adapt and learn from the WNBA's cautious past. So where does this leave us? Angel Reese's fiery approach to the pay debate has shown a spotlight on the WNBA's financial challenges and on the league's newfound surge in popularity, largely thanks to breakout stars like Caitlin Clark. In many ways, Reese and Clark stand on opposite ends of the conversation. Clark represents possibility, a reason for networks to take a second look at broadcasting women's basketball. Reese stands for frustration, belief that a rising tide would lift all boats. Both perspectives highlight the fact that women's basketball is evolving into something bigger and more relevant than it's ever been. Yet the WNBA has daunting hurdles to overcome. Limited media contracts compared to the NBA, decades of low viewership, and the constant reminder that without NBA subsidies, the league might not survive. The 2020 collective bargaining agreement gave players a significant raise, but it's still nowhere near the astronomical figures seen in men's sports. Critics wonder whether the league might lose momentum if internal arguments overshadow the product on the court. Fans hope the presence of bold personalities like Reese and Clark will keep driving interest and maybe, just maybe, pave the way for a more profitable future. In the end, the real question is who holds the key to the WNBA's next phase. Does Angel Reese bring enough star power to demand real change, or is she too polarizing to unite fans and stakeholders? Will Caitlin Clark remain the unstoppable force who pulls new viewers in by the millions? Or will there be an entirely different breakout star in the seasons to come? No matter the outcome, one thing is clear. Women's basketball is on the cusp of transformation. Whether Angel Reese is the agent of that change, or just another voice in a league still finding its footing, depends on what happens next. And, with so many eyes now watching, the stage is set for a showdown that could redefine the future of professional women's sports.